So let's start on the outcome of the US presidential election, because it's very clear that the United States is going to be plotting a very different course under this new president-elect. So Jenny, I'd like to start with you if I can, please. How do you see the policies of Joe Biden impacting the VC landscape and how you might deploy capital in 2021?
Well, I think it's actually too early to call and judge what the impact would be. But from a venture capital perspective, to be fair, with or without the election, we've been preparing for it. So 2-3 years ago, we've been looking at, what would the world look like from a venture investing perspective when US and China tension, whether they say get worse or get better. So I think that's actually more the overarching macro that we're looking at. And so under that larger macro environment where we have been investing as tech investors, and a bit of a step back, GGV, we invest in US, China, and in Asia as well. So from a global perspective, what we have seen and what we've been preparing for our portfolio companies to do is actually three aspects. One, we do see that going forward, whoever is in the White House, I think the supply chain is just going to get redesigned, and that means that companies, big, small, startup companies, is going to relook at the supply chain, and that may translate into having alternative sources, whether it's from the semiconductor perspective, supply perspective, manufacturing capacity perspective. So one, I think, expect supply chain to continue to be reconfigured, redesigned going forward. I think the second piece that we do see is that, from a company perspective, they are now thinking of a world where it may not be as globalized and integrated as before. And so I think along with what they've been thinking about for supply chain, we also expect that technology would happen now where we do talk about alternatives. So it's not single source, it's multiple source. You're going to see more investments, dollar, individual countries, individual regions, where it's going to go in to ensure that we have alternatives, backups, again, from supply chain all the way to the front. And that would also include labor, talent. So where talent is focused, I think we'll also see a more dispersed spread of where talent is going to come from versus, in the old days, there may be some concentration of talent, in the US, in Israel, in certain regions of expertise. So two on the talent part. And then thirdly, I would say that, on the consumer model, we have seen in the past that sometimes the consumer model that sprouts out, say in the US, the Facebook of the world, can actually see the model replicate itself on a global basis. We also think that that may change. In the new world that we face, I think that individual governments, individual local consumer may now take to having local model. And so maybe we're going to have different social network models, US, in China, in Asia. And if you extend that across the universe as well, it could also be as simple as saying now we have education tech innovation, and they may look similar but very localized in each of the regions. So I would say three areas: supply chain, and then I think talent, relocation, alternatives, backups, and then thirdly, the localization of more of that consumer-facing models.
Ibrahim, Jenny makes some great points there. How do you see this changing, perhaps how Mubadala might do business moving into 2021? What's your take on the outcome of the presidential election stateside?
Yeah, I mean, it's Jenny made some great points, so it's hard to follow on some of the very specific points she's made. Listen, 2020 has been it's been a vintage year for Mubadala. It's especially from a technology. I mean, we've been investing in technology for many, many years, and we've sort of set up our pillars and our foundations in the right way that enabled us to have one of our most busiest and exciting years in technology. We've invested globally all over the world. I think just to add a few comments, regardless of what's happening on the political side, we have seen the power of technology platforms. Our view is that this is going to continue to grow. We also this COVID situation has demonstrated and has proven that innovation can happen from anywhere. We're able to connect from anywhere we are. So I think there's a big theme around the growth and the development and the potential emergence of other technology hubs around the world. So for an investor like Mubadala, we think through the implications of that and where we should be looking for investments moving forward. We're always excited about Silicon Valley. We'll continue to be excited about Silicon Valley, but we're also looking at Europe. We're looking at the Middle East. We're looking at India. We plan to be very active in China. So, I think the implications of what's happened in 2020, I think to the point that Jenny makes around talent, is we are seeing some very exciting innovation emerge from different parts of the world that makes us as an investor, as a global investor, very, very well positioned.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been fascinating to see COVID really unravel and perhaps even accelerate a number of trends in this space. But I wanted to go over to Tim to get his perspective on this as well. Tim, you speak to CNBC quite regularly about what's happening in the markets and what's happening in the economy. Look, we're coming up to the end of the Trump era now. How do you see Joe Biden? Are you bearish, bullish, neutral on what his presidency might mean for the VC landscape and for markets and the economy moving forward?
Well, I'm actually very excited about the change. I think there are, while both parties recognize the value of technology, they recognize the value of decentralization, Bitcoin, the global economy, all of that. I think it's an opportunity now for a new president to reach out, build olive branches around the world, try to start reinvigorating all those supply chains that have been cut off because of the trade war that was created with China and all the barriers that we've been creating. I'm hoping that those things reopen because, and I'm kind of excited because I think we're going to allow more immigration in. And that is very good news for Draper University. Our students come from 84 different countries. We attract the best and the brightest entrepreneurs from all over the world. It's exciting for Meet the Drapers. Our shows had to be virtual because of COVID, but the show is eventually going to bring people in from all over the world, and that builds our supply chain. We have a supply chain of venture capital, of entrepreneurs, and that continues to build our supply chain. And the restrictions in immigration and the trade war limited our ability to attract the best entrepreneurs. And so now I think that that's going to loosen up, and I think it's going to be great. And I think that this administration is going to be more open to the idea of making Bitcoin a national currency, of opening the borders to decentralization, to allowing this to become more of a global world rather than a tribal world. And all those things are coming, and I think they will accelerate now with this new administration.